He rescued a woman's life on a mountain path but then lost his job, his calm, and nearly his good name. Until 10 luxury vehicles arrived at his front door. It began with loose gravel slipping sharply beneath his boots, causing him to drop into a crouch. Kevin had trekked this section of Beartooth Pass more times than he could remember. He enjoyed the silence, the elevation, the chill. It was among the few places where he didn't feel defined by his job, his race, or as a mere entry in someone's HR files. Just Kevin breathing fresh air, letting the world remain distant below him. But that Sunday, something felt wrong. A faint groan made him stop. It was not an animal. It sounded too human and came from off the main path about 10 meters into thick bushes. He paused briefly, then set down his pack and pushed through the branches. "Hey, can you hear me?" he called out. The reply was weak and uncertain. "Here, please." That's when he spotted her face, streaked with blood and grime, hair matted against her forehead, her right leg bent at an unnatural angle that tightened his stomach. Her hiking pants were ripped at the thigh, with blood drying along the tears. "I've got you," Kevin said. His instincts took over as he knelt beside her. She flinched. "Don't touch me. Wait. Who are you?" He raised both hands with palms facing out. "Kevin, I'm a nurse. You're seriously hurt, but I can help you." She blinked, dazed. "I think my phone is dead." He gave a simple nod. "Let me examine your leg, okay?" She did not reply, but did not resist him either. Kevin acted quickly. He gently pressed on the swollen area, inspected the angle of the fracture, and understood it had to be immobilized. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 lightweight aluminum tent poles along with a roll of gauze. She observed him, breathing rapidly, pain evident in her eyes yet silent. "This will hurt, but the relief will be worth it," he said. She clenched her teeth. "Just do it." Kevin carefully wrapped her leg with experienced hands, turning the poles into a temporary splint. He tore the sleeves off his undershirt to provide extra cushioning. It had been years since he had to treat a limb outside of nursing school, yet the skill returned to him as if it were instinct. "Are you alone?" he asked, his tone calm. She nodded slowly. "I needed space, just a weekend to catch my breath." "Poor timing for that," he muttered, as he tightened the final bandage. When he tried to lift her, she cried out sharply. Although she was unconscious, her weight felt heavier than expected. Taking a steady breath, he braced himself and lifted her into a carry position. Her arms secured around his neck, legs resting across his forearms. They still had at least 3 miles ahead to reach the ranger station. "I will stop if you need a break," she whispered through clenched teeth. Kevin met her gaze and replied, "No. I'll stop when you need to pause. You have already done enough." She let out an unusual brief laugh, something almost bitter. "You are always wandering, rescuing strangers," she said. Kevin smiled despite the burning sensation growing in his arms, only the privileged ones bearing bloodied faces. She narrowed her eyes at him and said, "You have no idea who I am, do you?" "No. Should I?" Her silence was answer enough. The descent was excruciating. Each step forced her to shift weight painfully. Twice Kevin nearly lost his footing. Once he slipped, crashing hard onto one knee which jolted them both, yet he pressed on. He couldn't stop. By the time they arrived at the station, she was barely conscious. Her skin ghostly pale, lips cracked and dry, body trembling. The ranger, a wiry man named Ryan, opened the door and froze. Kevin wasted no moment, announcing she had a lower TIB fibula fracture and mild head trauma, and that he had stabilized her, but she needed urgent evacuation. Ryan acted swiftly, calling for help and noting down her name. Kevin barely caught what Ryan said until his voice broke as he said, "Wait, you're Blair Kennedy." Kevin blinked, looking down at her, but she didn't respond. Her eyes shut, head resting against his chest. He said nothing else, but the name lingered in his mind, heavy as the burden he had just carried down the mountain. Kevin didn't drive straight home. Instead, he sat in his truck a while near the ranger station, elbows propped on the steering wheel, gazing emptily. The strain of the past hours hit him fully now. His arms ached, his shirt was stiff with sweat and grime, and his knee throbbed from the injury. But his thoughts only fixated on that name, Blair Kennedy, which held no meaning for him at that moment. The expression on the ranger's face was as if he had just witnessed someone remove a disguise only to reveal true nobility beneath. He took out his phone and searched for the name associated with the tech tycoon Billionaire, the CEO of Terra Helix, a clean energy firm that had revolutionized the oil industry. Known for rare public appearances, maintaining a low media profile, and possessing a net worth estimated around $6 billion. Kevin exhaled deeply and leaned back in his chair. He had not recognized her. She was just another person enduring hardship. Part of him suspected this was why she had not spoken immediately. Perhaps it felt freeing for once not to be seen as a headline. By the time he arrived home that evening, his phone had already started ringing non-stop. Ryan must have shared the story. Or maybe someone from the helicopter team that rescued her had done so. Local media picked up the event, dubbing him Montana's silent hero. Someone had captured a blurry image of him carrying her along the trail, muscles tense and face determined. His neighbors in his apartment complex had left a note on his door that read, "You're the talk of the building, man. That was some hero stuff." Signed by Tammy in apartment 2B and her teenage son Rowan. He smiled, placed the note on his refrigerator, and collapsed onto his couch. That night, he slept deeply. When he woke the next morning, everything had changed. Television crews were parked outside his building. A news van's side door was open, and a reporter holding a microphone was speaking with someone close to the curb. Kevin glanced through his blinds and groaned, realizing he was not made for this kind of spotlight. He could handle a crowded emergency room, a crying toddler, or even a motorcycle accident victim without issue. But people chasing sound bites and wanting to thrust him into the spotlight, that was not his world. His phone buzzed again. A brief message from his supervisor, Lorna Pascoe, read, "We need to talk. Come in today." Kevin stared at the screen for several moments before typing, "Is this about the patient I helped?" There was no reply. He took a shower, put on his scrubs, and left the building via the back stairs. Avoiding the cameras, he chose the longer route to Westbrook Medical Center and entered as if it were just another day. However, nothing felt ordinary. Some people gave him half-hearted smiles. Others quickly looked away, as if caught spying on something private. The atmosphere felt strange, like admiration and judgment were battling for dominance in the same room. He knocked on Lorna's office door. She motioned him inside without raising her eyes from the laptop. "So, you did," she said. No time was wasted. "You left your shift without informing anyone." "It was my day off," she added, raising a brow. "Technically, yes, but you were still on emergency call status. If we had needed you, you wouldn't have been available." Kevin blinked. "I saved someone's life," he said quietly. You broke protocol, she replied flatly. A heavy silence followed as she folded her hands. Look, Kevin. The board is not pleased. One of them has personal ties to Terra Helix. This kind of media attention complicates things a lot. He took her words seriously. He said in disbelief, I am not claiming it's fair, but decisions are being made beyond my control. He looked at her, feeling a surge of heat in his chest. So you're suspended. Her lips pressed tightly together. You are being let go, effective immediately. Kevin rose slowly. You're firing me because I helped someone due to how it was perceived. She corrected him. He left the office without saying a word. In the hallway he passed a nurse he had trained 2 years earlier. She tried to catch his gaze, but he avoided it. Yet as he stepped out of the hospital for the last time, something inside warned him this was far from over, and not by any means. Kevin did not head straight home. Instead, he drove aimlessly, hands clenched tightly on the steering wheel. His heart hammered with a fury that had nowhere to go. He was not shocked, really, but that did not lessen the pain. Losing his job was one thing, but being discarded like refuse for doing what was right struck deeply. He pulled into a worn diner's parking lot off Interstate 90 somewhere between Billings and Laurel, the kind of place with faded signs and a jukebox silent for years. He had eaten here many times during long shifts. The waitress Blair was behind the counter as usual, cracking eggs with one hand while muttering at the radio. Kevin slid into a booth beside the window. After a moment she noticed him. Hey Kevin, you look terrible. Want some coffee or maybe something stronger? He laughed dryly. Both please, she replied. She brought the cup without saying a word. After a moment she leaned on the counter and looked at him. I saw you on the news. That was you, right? The hiker nurse. He shrugged. I guess so. What they never mentioned is how that billionaire managed to get out there without anyone knowing. The whole town is buzzing. Kevin took a sip of the coffee and then quietly added, She didn't want publicity, and neither did I. Blair nodded slowly. Some people do good deeds quietly, and others take pictures to praise themselves. Apparently, doing the right thing just got me fired, he said. She didn't react. Let me guess. It had something to do with rules, timing, or liability? Kevin smiled, but his eyes lacked warmth. They said it was because I was on emergency call status, but I know it goes deeper than that. Someone on the board disliked me being in the headlines with her. Blair scoffed. That's the lamest excuse I've heard in ages. He gazed out the window as a storm was approaching from the west, gray clouds piling up like bricks. You know the worst part? He asked. She hasn't even reached out. Not a text, not a call. I'm not angry with her. I just thought she might check in. Blair poured more coffee and said, Maybe she will. Or maybe she thinks you don't need the thanks. But Kevin was no longer sure. That night he arrived home late. No cameras, no reporters, just silence. The attention had faded quicker than it appeared. Maybe it was all over now, and perhaps that was for the best. He sat on his couch, scrolling through job listings on his phone. Emergency rooms in Missoula were full. Urgent care clinics in Bozeman had nothing available, and there was no help nearby that offered stability or decent pay. His phone vibrated, showing an unknown number. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, then answered hello. There was a pause before a voice, soft yet steady, said Kevin. It's Blair Kennedy. His mouth suddenly felt dry. Wow, I never thought I'd hear from you. I wasn't sure if I should call, she said, but I learned what happened at the hospital. I'm sorry. That was never meant to happen. He let the silence linger a moment. You didn't owe me anything. I did what anyone would have done. No, she answered firmly. You didn't. You carried a complete stranger down a mountain with a broken leg without ever asking who I was. You treated me like a person, not some prize. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. So why are you calling now? Because I've been thinking about people like you, she explained. The ones who get penalized for doing what's right. I want to meet you face to face. He narrowed his eyes. You're still in Montana? Not anymore. But I'll be back tomorrow morning. Why? There was a pause. Because this isn't over. I have something I want to give you. It's not charity but an opportunity. He didn't understand what she meant. Before he could reply, she added, You'll recognize it when you see it. Then ended the call. Kevin stared at the screen, now showing a blank number and the timestamp. The wind rattled the window pane outside. Yet something about her voice stayed with him, like she already knew the next chapter of his life was about to arrive. Early the next morning, Kevin was awakened by a deep, smooth engine sound, unlike the usual sputtering trucks or neighbors starting their SUVs. This noise was distinct and involved several vehicles. He rubbed his eyes, shuffled to the window, and pulled back the curtain. At least 10 cars were entering his street, black, silver, dark blue, all immaculately clean to a mirror finish without a single speck of dirt. There were Mercedes Bentleys and a white Rolls-Royce near the front. They were not merely parking, they were forming a line just outside his building. Kevin stepped back from the window, his heart suddenly pounding, and opened his front door just in time to see Mrs. Holland from next door, holding her small dog in one hand, while shielding her eyes from the morning sun with the other. Do you know who those people are? She asked wide-eyed. Kevin just stared and said, I think maybe. The Rolls-Royce passenger door opened slowly, a man in a dark suit stepping out first. Then a tall, composed woman with a slim cane and dark sunglasses appeared, her hair pulled back. When she lowered her glasses, Kevin instantly recognized Blair Kennedy. She was not surrounded by media or cameras, but accompanied by a quiet team that seemed part of some diplomatic mission. 2 of them carried sleek briefcases, one scanning the street carefully as if looking for potential threats. Blair Kennedy approached him slowly, her gaze locked on his. I did not mean to cause a scene, she said once she was close enough. You brought a motorcade to my street, he said, laughing nervously. I did, she confessed. But I needed to be sure you would speak with me. Neighbors were peering from their windows, some snapping pictures. Kevin could feel every single pair of eyes on them. Do you want to come inside? He asked. She smiled softly. Yes, I would like that. Inside his simple apartment, the modesty seemed out of place compared to her usual surroundings. The silence between them was heavy. She took a seat at the small dining table while a member of her staff quietly placed a leather folder before her, and then left. Blair leaned on her cane and glanced around. I like this place. It feels lived in, she said. Kevin poured 2 glasses of water, more from habit than kindness. Do you want to tell me why you are really here? He asked. I owe you more than words, she answered. You said that already last night, he replied. But I never showed it, she went on. You lost your job because of me, Kevin. I have been thinking about that every hour since I heard the news. He shook his head. You are not responsible for how others react. I do not blame you, but I blame myself, she said quietly, because I have spent years building walls around me. Money, silence, distance. You did not ask for anything, and that is exactly why I am here. Kevin leaned against the counter. So what happens now? Do you write me a check? She laughed. I am not here to buy you off, he said, crossing his arms. Then what is the offer? She asked, opening the folder filled with documents and maps inside. Blueprints and a proposal bearing his name at the top revealed that I have been financing mobile medical units in remote areas of the country, places hospitals avoid. We have been searching for someone with genuine expertise, someone who can lead in the field, train others, and truly care instead of merely logging hours. He gazed at the document, reading the initial sentences aloud. You want me to manage a clinic on wheels? She replied, I am giving you the opportunity to design it exactly how you envision. Equipment, personnel, even the routes, it will be your initiative. I will provide the funding. You determine its reach. Kevin lifted his eyes. Why me? Because you didn't question who I was when I was at my lowest, she explained. And you supported me when I was unable to walk. That's the kind of person I want creating something meaningful. He found himself lost for words, his fingers trembling as he shut the folder. You don't need to decide right now, she said, rising to her feet. But if you accept, the first van is 2 blocks away, ready to go. She moved toward the exit. Kevin trailed silently behind, still stunned. As the door closed and those expensive cars drove off, he recognized the hardest moment wasn't helping her down the mountain, but choosing whether to take what she had entrusted to him. The hours that followed resembled standing at a busy intersection with traffic rushing in every direction. Kevin sat at the kitchen table, fixated on the open folder before him. It felt like the proposal might start speaking to him. Inside, it was more than generous. It was life-changing. It promised freedom and funding and a chance to make an impact that most in his field only dreamed about. Yet, it didn't feel real. Not just yet. He reached out to his cousin Ryan, who lived down in Spokane. You busy, Kevin? He asked. No, just watching some rerun about cops bungling a case, Ryan replied. You good? Kevin exhaled deeply. Blair Kennedy showed up at my apartment this morning. You serious? Yeah, Kevin said. She arrived with 10 cars and a team that looked like the Secret Service. What in the world for? She offered me a job. No, actually a project. She wants me to lead a mobile medical unit, build it from scratch, and bring it to places no one else goes. Ryan paused, then asked, And what's stopping you? Kevin scanned his apartment. The bare walls, thrift store furniture, the microwave that never closed properly. It had been enough, but now it seemed like a snapshot of a life shaped by settling. I don't know, it feels huge, Kevin admitted. Too huge, like maybe I'm not the one for it. That's the dumbest thing I've heard from you, Ryan replied. You carried a billionaire down a mountain like a firefighter. Who else should be doing something grand if not you? Kevin remained silent for a moment. Ryan added, Don't let them firing you be the story you remember. Make this the next one. That stuck with him. Later that day he walked through town without disguise or hood up. If people noticed him, they said nothing. But he sensed something more. Quiet looks and hesitant glances. Someone whispered his name softly. When he walked past the post office, He paused at the small park opposite the bus terminal and sat on a bench, reflecting on the night shifts, the stretchers, the uninsured patients, the elderly man who came every week just to chat. He recalled how often he had spoken up for those who might otherwise be overlooked. Sometimes his efforts succeeded, other times they did not. What Blair Kennedy offered was more than just a salary, it was influence. He would have a voice in how people received care. Decisions about the van's destinations and which resources to deploy were based on trust rather than charity. He took out his phone and dialed the number that Blair's assistant had quickly jotted down in the folder. A man answered, "Mr. Daly." "Yes, tell her I agreed," he replied firmly. The man responded without hesitation. "She will be pleased. We will arrive by tomorrow morning to begin onboarding. Do you need time to move?" Kevin hesitated, then said, "No. If I want to help people, I want to start right here." The next morning arrived swiftly. A single black SUV pulled up quietly this time. A woman in a gray jacket stepped out and identified herself as Mara, the legal liaison for the foundation. She handed him a fresh binder with finalized paperwork. Everything had been confirmed: budget, personnel, outreach plans, and maps. His name appeared as Director of Field Medicine. "You will have your first van by next week," Mara explained. "We already have a short list of communities in Idaho and South Dakota. In places where care was either patchy or completely absent, you would pick up the remaining pieces." Kevin flipped through the pages and admitted, "I have never managed anything like this before." Mara grinned and said Blair Kennedy had felt the same hesitation when she got Terra Helix off the ground. "We do not want anything polished. We want something genuine," she declared. Kevin signed the final page and passed the folder back. "Welcome to the work that truly counts," Mara said. As the SUV pulled away, Kevin stood on his porch clutching the folder. But once the dust from the tires began to settle, a new feeling crept in. Not doubt, but a question. What happens when people start observing you not for your actions, but for the identity they construct in their minds? By the end of the week, the initial van arrived. It resembled a small mobile clinic more than anything else. Sleek, well-equipped, and surprisingly silent. It had everything from portable ultrasound machines to trauma kits and special compartments for keeping vaccines cold. Kevin circled it in amazement, his hand gently tracing its side as if examining a borrowed and delicate treasure. He was unprepared for the speed at which the rumors would spread. At first, the remarks appeared online and were fairly tame. Typical armchair critics wondering how a nurse fired just days ago had somehow come to lead a multi-million-dollar outreach effort. A few anonymous tweets insinuated he might have faked the entire rescue. One post almost went viral with the headline, "Man Saves Rich." A woman suddenly becoming wealthy feels a bit too plausible, does it not, Kevin? He did not reply as usual. Yet the more he ignored the whispers, the louder they seemed to grow. Even the townspeople began to behave unusually. A barista at the nearby coffee shop asked in disbelief if he truly intended to live off the fortune of a billionaire now. Someone he previously cared for at Westbrook walked right past him in the market, avoiding eye contact. Overnight, the narrative seemed to have shifted from savior to opportunist. Ryan called again one evening, his voice tense with urgency. "Are you seeing this nonsense online?" Kevin exhaled heavily. "Yes, I have been avoiding it. They are portraying things as if you pulled her out of the wilderness just for a payday." He leaned on the kitchen counter. "I did not even know her. You owe no one an explanation, Ryan told him. But if you remain silent, they will write the whole story for you. Kevin understood his point, yet whenever the idea of speaking out crossed his mind, he hesitated. He did not want to appear defensive or sanctimonious. His sole wish was to help quietly. That had always been his approach. 2 weeks later, the mobile clinic's inaugural journey took him to a reservation located just beyond Poplar, Montana. The local health center had ceased operations 2 years earlier, forcing residents to travel nearly 1.5 hours for even basic medical attention. He arrived shortly after dawn, with word having already spread. Several dozen people awaited him. Mothers cradling young children, elderly gentlemen sitting on folding chairs, teenagers pretending they did not require assistance. Despite everything, Kevin stepped out of the van with his clipboard in hand and said, "All right, everyone, let's get to work." He spent 10 hours on his feet that day, and by the end, his back was burning with pain. Yet, he had seen 46 patients, set 2 broken bones, administered 70 flu vaccines, removed an infected splinter from a toddler, and gave a grandmother new medicine for her asthma. That night, sitting in the back of the van with his shoes off and a sandwich in hand, he experienced a feeling he hadn't had in weeks. Solid. Grounded. But the moment was short-lived when Blair Kennedy's team sent him an article from a national gossip website. The headline claimed, "Nurse-turned-mogul How Kevin Daly Went From Fired to Funded." The article lacked sources and was filled with speculation, showing pictures of him leaving the hospital and a blurry image of a caravan outside his building. It framed his story like a fairy tale with suspicious undertones. Blair called him the following day. "I read the piece," she said. Kevin sighed. "It's not even accurate." "Accuracy does not matter to those who want to find reasons to doubt," she replied. "What matters is how you handle it." He hesitated. "Should I respond and set the record straight?" "That's your choice," she answered. "But I will say this. Some people will always feel uneasy watching someone like you hold the keys." He understood what she meant. He had felt it before. But what truly kept him awake that night was not the rumors. He wondered how many individuals might need assistance but chose not to come because they believed what they read a week later. Kevin sat opposite a journalist in a small, neutral cafe just beyond downtown Billings. No camera crew, no microphones, only 2 cups of black coffee resting between them, and a notebook that the reporter hardly touched. Her name was Shiloh Greer, a freelancer in her early 30s with sharp eyes that rarely blinked. She was not affiliated with any gossip outlet or major network. She had contacted Kevin through Blair Kennedy's office with a single message. "I do not want your scandal. I want your perspective." Kevin almost declined, but then considered all the patients who might skip his clinic after reading the wrong headline. He decided if anyone was going to share the truth, it had to start with him. "You carried her down 3 miles?" Shiloh asked, her pen poised in the air. "No stretcher? Just your arms?" He nodded slowly. 4 miles, actually. I stopped once to rest, but she was weakening fast. I could not risk waiting for a ranger team." "And you had no idea who she was?" she pressed. "Did not care," he replied. "She was injured. I was trained. That was enough." Shiloh quickly wrote something down before looking up again. "Why do you believe the story focused on you?" Kevin paused briefly. "People do not like it when someone bypasses the rules. They think that if something hasn't come to you gradually, then it must be a shortcut. Do I feel like I jumped the line? I got fired for helping someone. Then I was given another opportunity by someone who might have easily forgotten about me. I did not request it, but I refused to regret making the most of it." She offered a faint smile and turned the page, asking, "Do you ever wish you had just kept walking that day? Let someone else find her?" Ryan did not hesitate or blink. "No, never." That response lingered heavily between them. The interview took place 2 days later. It was neither sensational nor flashy. There were no accusations, only straightforward honesty. It was Kevin's own words, unedited and free from any manipulation. He shared about being raised by a single mother in Helena, and how witnessing a school friend bleed out without anyone nearby knowing CPR led him into nursing. He spoke simply about the day on the mountain, without exaggeration or any claims of heroism. Afterward, people started noticing that the clinic's inbox filled up with messages from nurses, patients, and residents in rural areas, asking if he could come to their towns next. Donations arrived too, not from large companies but from ordinary people. One woman in Wyoming sent $40 along with a note saying, "You helped that lady, maybe you can help my dad next." Yet, not everyone approved of the change. One morning, he discovered a note taped to the back of the van's windshield. It read, "Bought and paid for, hope she's worth it." No signature, just a harsh message hastily scrawled in capital letters. Kevin chose not to report it and never mentioned the note to Blair Kennedy. Instead, he crumpled the paper and threw it in the dumpster behind the pharmacy. Later that week, while he was restocking supplies outside the van, a man approached him daily. Kevin slowly turned around. The man looked to be in his 50s with an unkempt beard and eyes that seemed too calm to be trusted. The man said, "I read that article. You speak really smoothly." Kevin did not respond. The man shrugged and said, "Just watch out. Fame like that never lasts, and when it crashes down you better have a parachute ready." Kevin stared back and said, "I am not trying to soar. I am just trying to work." The man smirked, then turned and walked away. Later, Kevin sat alone inside the van with the lights dimmed, his hands resting quietly on his knees. He recalled something his mother once told him. Doing the right thing does not always feel good, but you keep doing it anyway. He glanced down at the binder on the seat beside him. 6 more towns awaited him, 6 more places where no one else dared to go. But that night he made a silent promise. Let people talk. He would build something so strong, rumors could never break it. 3 months later, the van looked unchanged on the outside, but everything about it had shifted. The way people responded when it arrived had transformed. Children waved eagerly. Elders came early just to wait in line and chat. Volunteers in every town began calling ahead to help organize the patients for the day, manage the crowds, and even bring sandwiches for those traveling from miles away. Kevin had just finished checking a young boy's glucose levels in a remote town near Thermopolis, Wyoming. The boy's mother hugged him afterward. She said her son had not seen a doctor in over a year. The nearest clinic was 50 miles away, and they did not own a car. Now Kevin was on the road 6 days a week, one stop at a time, one wound at a time, one story, one handshake. It was steady effort, genuine labor, nothing extravagant, but every bandage, every vial, every pulse on the portable heart monitor carried meaning, and the whispers they had diminished. Of course, from time to time, someone on social platforms would attempt to revive the old narrative, allegations of bias, rumors about Blair Kennedy's intentions. Yet Kevin no longer replied. He found it unnecessary. The individuals he assisted made a louder statement than any critics ever could. Blair came twice discreetly. No escort, just herself and a driver. She lingered for a few hours. Each visit asked questions, watched attentively, never intruded, allowing him to take charge after her second time there. They stood behind the van as the sun sank beneath the prairie skyline. "Did you ever consider growing this?" she inquired Kevin, gazed toward the field where children tossed a football casually. "Yes," he said, "but I want to perfect it before I expand." She agreed. That was the response I hoped for. He faced her. "You never shared why you truly supported me. I mean, you claimed it was because I never questioned who you were. But it seems like there is something more." She paused, then replied, "You never treated me as a case study. You never hesitated or withdrew or acted artificially. I have been close to authority all my life, Kevin. Kevin, most people see you as a reflection, merely showing what they want to find. But you spotted a woman bleeding at the ground and said, 'I have you, that is unusual.'" He did not answer. There was nothing to add. Before she departed, she gave him a letter, carefully handwritten and folded once. Later that night, when he read it, it was brief. Just a few paragraphs expressing gratitude once more, ending with a line that struck deep within him. "I have spent years creating an empire. But you reminded me that empires mean nothing if people forget the essence of service." Kevin kept that letter safely in the van's glove compartment. Months passed, and by the arrival of spring, he had trained 2 more nurses and purchased a second van through the same program. He chose the name himself, North Reach Mobile Health. One morning, a teenager named Zoe asked if she could accompany him for the day and observe his work. She dreamed of becoming a paramedic, but had not believed it was possible until she saw the van in her town. He agreed and showed her how to measure blood pressure, how to communicate calmly, and how to listen beyond mere words. At the end of the day, she said, "I never imagined we could do something like this." Kevin looked at her and replied, "We can, and you will." Back at home, his refrigerator still held that note from Tammy in apartment 2B. The microwave door still failed to close properly. But none of that mattered. He was creating something genuine, something enduring that this time no one could take away through a boardroom decision or a cold office meeting. This time, he was the one holding the pen. Life does not always reward the loudest voice or the one with the neatest resume. Sometimes it finds the quiet person bearing someone else's pain without expecting anything in return. This story offers an opportunity to change the way things are done. If it touched your heart, please share it with others. And if you believe in acting kindly even when nobody is paying attention, subscribe for more tales that highlight what truly counts in life.